continue to get reaction on this story, this time from Freedom Under Law, the second applicant in the matter. Executive Officer Nicole Fritz is in studio with us. Thanks very much, Nicole, for coming into studio. It's been called by a number of quarters a victory for South Africans. Unpack that victory for us.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's no doubt that this is a victory for South Africans, for our constitutional democracy. The court was very clear that the independence of the National Director of Public Prosecutions, the institution of the National Prosecutions Authority, is at the heart of our constitutional democracy, that its independence and integrity must be safeguarded. It said to subvert the criminal justice system is to subvert the rule of law. And I think what we have today is a judgment that vindicates that, that says, you know, to the extent that the removal, termination of Mr. Nxasana's employment at the National Prosecuting Authority, that was unlawful, that there was then no vacancy to fulfill, that the current incumbent, Sean Abrahams, his appointment is invalid. They order the President to appoint a new National Director of Public Prosecutions within 90 days. I think that all sets the stage, the potential for a new, revived National Prosecuting Authority that is no longer compromised by the paralyzing instability that we have seen over so many years, that can lead with integrity and honesty. And so I think that this is something that all South Africans have a vested interest in, and hopefully is to the benefit of all South Africans, that we see justice restored, that the NPA works to ensure justice and not so much just to protect certain interests.
Now, given everything that you've said and how paramount this institution is for constitutional democracy, has it taken us an awfully long time to get to this day and to get to this judgment?
Well, you know, the fact is, unfortunately, the wheels of justice do turn fairly slowly. But this, you know, we have a constitution and a judiciary that is acclaimed the world over. And the fact is, you know, to give people fair hearings when you make decisions with, you know, such enormous ramifications, they can't be decisions that are taken overnight. There has to be real consideration. And so, yes, I mean, I know that there was some concern as to the time that this was taking, but we've got a very strong judgment that is very robustly reasoned. And I think that goes to the strength of our Constitution and our democracy.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Nxasana has just been tweeting that consultations will now take place with the presidency to make this new appointment within 90 days. Does the name Vusi Pikoli come up for you at all?
Look, I mean, it's not for us as civil society to, you know, to have to necessarily say that they're particular individuals.
Before you continue with that point, Nicole, let's just interrupt our interview for just a short while. Nxasana, our senior reporter who was at the Constitutional Court this morning, she's now with NPA spokesperson Luvuyo Mfako in Pretoria.
Yes, Michelle, we've moved to Pretoria from the Constitutional Court to Pretoria to the NPA's offices in Pretoria, and I've got Luvuyo with me. He's been the NPA spokesperson for quite some time, ever since Sean Abrahams took over as National Director of Public Prosecutions. You've been a very professional and courteous colleague, I'd almost say, to most of us in the media. You and Sean watched Mr. Abrahams, Advocate Abrahams, I should say, watched the judgment together today.
Yes, we did. We watched it together. And he is massively disappointed. Remember, his fitness to hold office was not an issue. He was not party to the negotiated settlement. However, he respects the decision of the Apex Court.
How are you and Advocate Abrahams taking it? I mean, there's been so much disruption in the NPA over the years, and this is a difficult day for you.
Very, very difficult. He is a friend, a brother. I've known him for years. This is very difficult. I can't express how we feel, but we'll take it on the chin and we'll move on. He's an absolute professional. He will serve in whatever capacity. But I would imagine that he will take some time off and be with his family, reflect and decide on the way forward.
Luvuyo, what happens now? Does the presidency get in touch with you to find out whether he wants an acting person in position? Does Advocate Abrams, stay in place for 90 days to do a handover? What's going to happen?
There's no clarity as far as that is concerned. Remember, the appointing authority is the president. Now we are awaiting some kind of guidance from the presidency. So as far as that is concerned, would not be in a position to comment.
A lot of the judgment focused on the integrity, the stability of the National Prosecuting Authority, how it's been used as a political tool over the years, and how low staff morale must be because of that. How's everyone feeling inside the offices here?
Look, I didn't get a chance to go around the offices, but if you still recall, since his appointment in 2015, we issued a statement stipulating that everybody was so excited to be led by one of their own. He's a person who grew up literally in this institution. I would imagine that the mood in terms of the staff is bad as we speak. However, the issues that you've raised relating to the stability of the institution, we firmly believe as an institution that his appointment brought stability. I mean, the results, our performance speaks for itself. We've been in Parliament during our parliamentary sessions, where we have been commended by the parliamentarians in terms of the performance. Now, an institution that is not stable would not actually perform to that level.
Do you think that Advocate Abrams was surprised by today's decision, or did you have some sort of insight into the way things were going to possibly go?
We did not have an insight. I mean, the rumor mill was running amok, but we did not consider that because we are officers of the court. We respect the stature of that particular court and the integrity of that court, so we would not actually take those rumors seriously. But I mean, the same token, we're saying it can go either way, and in a way we try to prepare ourselves for whatever outcome.
You've had to front a lot of the pressure and scathing attacks on Advocate Abrams over the past 2 years. Shaun the Sheep, all the memes, all the social media issues. How has he taken that kind of pressure since he took the position?
Look, he decided that he would not actually consider that, he would not take that seriously. He would not actually, I mean, that would mean that he would lose focus. We understood that he's an absolute professional, and in this country there's this notion which Advocate Ngalwana refers to as the rule of the media. It actually prevails. In line with that rule of the media, you are guilty until you are proven innocent. We are guided by the rule of law. We'll never be guided by the rule of the media. Ours is that the presumption of innocence is the fundamental tenet of our constitutional dispensation. Now, we would never allow a situation where the media would be the defense counsel for certain individuals, and for other individuals say, no, go, I mean, you are already convicted. So he actually remained guided by his values that are enshrined, that are actually built around the principles of justice and fairness.
Luvuyo, so plotting the way forward, has anyone been earmarked to take over from within the institution or outside that you know of?
The court has not found him not fit to hold office. So when the president considers candidates to take over the institution, I would imagine that his name would not be discarded as well, because he has not been found to be unfit to hold office. We've got depth of experience in this institution. We've got deputy nationals, female for that matter. This is a Women's Month. You've got Advocate Monomvula Mukhatla, Advocate Nomqobojiba, Advocate Tenga, Moiponi Nogo. These are seasoned prosecutors who would actually take this institution forward if considered, but that is not our call. It is the call of the president as to who will lead this institution.
Luvuyo, you've been I can see it's been a hard day for you. You've been a consummate professional and a gentleman, and I thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good luck on the way forward. Thank you so much, sir. There you had Luvuyo Mfaku, who is the NPA's national spokesperson. A difficult day for him. He's been very close to Shaun Abrahams for a long time. He's an advocate himself who specializes in extradition and international law. And he's not sure of his future either. And so quite a gloomy day here for the National Prosecuting Authority, despite what the public may say about Shaun Abrahams. He has a lot of colleagues here who respected him and his work here at the NPA. Michelle.
Yeah, well, thanks very much for that very important interview. Our senior reporter, Nxasana, speaking there to the NPA spokesperson. All right, let's continue our discussion on this issue now. Nicole Fritz is from Freedom Under Law. She's still in studio with us. Nicole, you can see it's a difficult interview for Luvuyo Mfaku to have done. It was quite an emotional day. I feel like he was sort of teetering on the edge while doing that interview. What's your view on some of the things he had to say, particularly that they actually didn't see this one coming?
Right, well, I mean, I think nobody knew for certain what the court was going to find. I mean, the deliberations are secret, and we don't know until the outcome. That said, I mean, we had a constitutional court. I mean, there was a minority judgment today, obviously, but the court was unanimous in the fact that the termination of Mr. Nxasana's appointment was invalid. The settlement paid to him should be set aside and was invalid. But also that the appointment of Mr. Abrahams to the post of National Director of Public Prosecutions was unlawful. There was no dispute amongst the court, and these were several judges. The only dispute came down to whether Mr. Nxasana, Mr. Abrahams' predecessor, in fact, should be reinstated to that post. And the one thing that I would say, I do think that South Africans owe Mr. Nxasana a debt. The minority judgment today saying that they were not sure that fairness had been visited on him. He was required to repay the settlement that had been granted him, but he wasn't to be returned to his post. Now, this is a man who didn't just take the money and run. He always made it very clear that he did not wish to leave the post, that he was pushed out, that he was subject to incredibly onerous pressures. Former President Zuma instituted an inquiry into his fitness to hold office. He always said he wanted that inquiry to go ahead so that he could clear his name. Parallel to that, Michael Hulley was offering him money to leave. Our argument was that ultimately, in the face of that onerous pressure, he did leave. He then came and said, I'm very happy to repay that money if I am reinstated to the position. And it also, but for Mr. Nxasana's involvement, we would have no real reflection of the negotiations that transpired, the abuse of the president's powers. It was his disclosure of those negotiations that really put the lie to the president's defense, that made it clear what abuse had taken place. So there is another person here who has not necessarily had justice meted out to him, and to whom I think the South African public does owe some debt.
Yeah, I mean, he could have taken the money and run, essentially.
Exactly.
Nicole, I want to talk to you about this issue around the appointment of the new person who will take over this incredibly important role in the country. And Luvuyo Mfaku telling my colleague Nxasana there that Shaun Abrahams has not been found unfit to hold office. So when the president is weighing up who might be a good fit as NDPP, he doesn't see any reason why Shaun Abrahams' name shouldn't come up as well.
Okay, well, I mean, we as Freedom Under Law would have a problem with Mr. Abrahams being considered. Obviously, there are several cases in respect of a court order which Freedom Under Law obtained last year in respect of the withdrawal of charges against Ms. Jiba at the National Prosecuting Authority. So one of Shaun Abrahams' first acts as National Director of Public Prosecutions was to withdraw the charges against Ms. Jiba. Mr. Nxasana, in fact, had sought the President's authorization in order to subject her to a disciplinary inquiry. And in fact, the disagreements around Ms. Jiba's position is, in fact, led to the removal of Mr. Nxasana from office. As I said, Mr. Abrahams, one of his first acts was to withdraw the charges against her that had been instituted by Mr. Nxasana. And we got a court order that said that decision to withdraw the charges was irrational and should be set aside. We also had an order from the court, an interim order, which said Ms. Jiba was prohibited from attending the National Prosecuting Authority's offices, from performing any function there, until finalization of the appeals in respect of the General Counsel of the Bar matter. Now we know, I mean, the National Prosecuting Authority, Siobhan Abrahams, has admitted that she actually visited the NPA's offices in the first 6 months of this year. That was a clear violation of the order. We said that that action is not befitting of the office holder of the highest prosecuting authority in the land. We also think that his conduct in respect of the charging of Mr. Ivan Pillay, Mr. Opa Magashula, Mr. Praveen Gordon, the fact that they had very clear evidence that in fact supported Mr. Pillay and Mr. Gordon and Mr. Magashula, but that notwithstanding that they went ahead and pressed these charges against them, again suggests that we did not have an individual heading the National Prosecuting Authority who was fit and proper for that position.
And who was impartial.
And who was impartial, no, absolutely. We think that his position there was essentially to protect certain people from accountability and not to ensure accountability.
Well, a number of discussions we'll continue having in the coming days. Thanks very much for your input.